Have you ever wondered why a tech billionaire who owns private jets and super yachts would pay $75,000 for a simple wooden dining table made by people who don't even use electricity? While most millionaires chase Italian marble and gold-plated fixtures, the truly wealthy elite are secretly competing for furniture handcrafted by Amish communities in rural America. These aren't just chairs and tables, they're investments that outlast stock portfolios, heirlooms that appreciate while Ferraris depreciate, and status symbols so exclusive that no amount of money guarantees you'll get one. What makes these plain-looking wooden pieces worth more than luxury cars? The answer will change how you see wealth forever. Welcome to Amish Forge, where we uncover the extraordinary stories behind ordinary-looking objects. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most fascinating paradoxes in the luxury market: why the world's wealthiest individuals are obsessed with furniture made by communities that reject modern technology entirely. We're talking about pieces that take 6 months to build, chairs that your great-grandchildren will inherit, and craftsmanship so precise that billionaires put themselves on year-long waiting lists just for a chance to own one. In the next 30 minutes, you'll discover the shocking economics, the lost art, and the cultural philosophy that makes Amish furniture the ultimate status symbol among those who truly understand value. Stick around, because this goes way deeper than you think. The Amish way of life, picture this: a community living in 2026, exactly as their ancestors did in the 1700s, no electricity coursing through their homes, no smartphones buzzing with notifications, no internet connecting them to the outside world. The Amish people have deliberately chosen to freeze time, and this isn't about being backward or ignorant. It's a calculated decision, rooted in preserving what they believe matters most: family, faith, and genuine human connection. While we're all drowning in the chaos of modern life, constantly distracted and perpetually exhausted, the Amish have created an alternative reality, where life moves at the pace of a handsaw cutting through oak. Their day begins before sunrise. Not because an alarm jolts them awake, but because their bodies are naturally synchronized with the rhythm of nature. There's no scrolling through social media over breakfast, no checking emails, no digital noise whatsoever. Instead, there's conversation, prayer, and the anticipation of meaningful work ahead. The men head to their workshops where generations of knowledge live in their calloused hands. The women manage households with an efficiency that would put modern smart homes to shame, all without a single gadget. But here's what most people misunderstand. The Amish aren't rejecting technology because they fear it or don't understand it. They're incredibly strategic about what they allow into their lives. They've studied modernity and consciously said no thank you to most of it. Why? Because they've identified something we're all slowly realizing. Technology promised to connect us, but has left us more isolated than ever. It promised to save us time, but has stolen our attention. It promised convenience, but has cost us our craftsmanship. This philosophy of intentional living doesn't just shape their personal lives. It fundamentally transforms their approach to work and creation. When you're not rushing to meet arbitrary deadlines set by market demands, when you're not cutting corners to compete with mass production, when your reputation in a small, tight-knit community is everything, you work differently. You think differently. You create differently. An Amish furniture maker isn't trying to make as much as possible, as quickly as possible. He's trying to make something so perfect that his great-grandson will still be proud to use it. That mindset, that relationship with time and quality, is what billionaires are actually paying for. Years old, techniques walk into any Amish workshop, and you'll experience immediate sensory overload, but not from machinery noise. It's the smell of fresh-cut hardwood, the rhythmic sound of hand planes shaving paper-thin curls from solid oak, and the sight of tools that look like they belong in a museum being wielded with surgical precision. These aren't antiques collecting dust. They're active instruments in the hands of masters who've spent decades perfecting their craft. While modern furniture factories have robots and CNC machines that can cut 1,000 identical pieces in an hour, an Amish craftsman might spend an entire day on a single joint. And that's exactly the point. The techniques being used in these workshops haven't changed in 300 years. Not because the Amish are stubborn or stuck in the past, but because these methods were perfected long before planned obsolescence became a business model. Consider the dovetail joint, an interlocking puzzle of wood that creates such a strong bond that it actually gets tighter over time. As the wood naturally expands and contracts with humidity changes, a modern factory uses staples, screws, or cheap dowels. An Amish craftsman cuts each dovetail by hand, ensuring that the angles are precise to within a 64th of an inch. Why? Because a properly cut dovetail joint will outlast the wood itself. Then there's the mortise and tenon, arguably the foundation of all fine woodworking. While a factory might drill a hole in glue in a dowel, calling it good enough, an Amish craftsman carves a perfectly square hole and shapes a matching protrusion with tolerances so tight that the pieces snap together with satisfying resistance. No glue needed, though they'll often add hide glue made from animal collagen, the same adhesive used in Stradivarius violins that has held strong for centuries. Modern wood glue might fail in 50 years. Hide glue has a proven track record of 500. Every tool tells a story. The hand planes, some passed down through 4 or 5 generations, have been sharpened so many times that the blades are half their original width. The chisels, kept sharp enough to shave hair, are extensions of the craftsman's hands. The marking gauges, wooden devices that look primitive but allow for measuring precision that digital tools would envy. These aren't just tools, they're relationships. A master craftsman knows his playing the way a violinist knows their instrument, understanding its quirks, its temperament, how it performs in different humidity levels. This intimate knowledge allows for a level of quality control that no factory, no matter how advanced, can replicate. Material selection mastery before a single cut is made, before any design is finalized. The most critical decision in Amish furniture making happens choosing the wood. And this isn't a trip to Home Depot to grab whatever's in stock. This is a process that can take months, sometimes years, and it reveals why Amish furniture commands prices that seem absurd until you understand what you're actually paying for. An Amish furniture maker doesn't just buy wood, he hunts for it, studies it, and builds relationships with timber suppliers who understand that not all oak is created equal. Not all walnut deserves to become an heirloom, and not all cherry should be trusted with a billionaire's dining room. The selection process begins with understanding grain patterns like a geologist reads rock formations, straight grain, quartersawn, riffsawn. These aren't just technical terms, but predictions about how this piece of wood will behave over the next 100 years. Will it warp when humidity changes? Will it split when stressed? Will the color deepen gracefully or fade disappointingly? A master can look at a rough-cut plank and see its future, understanding which pieces belong in a tabletop bearing the weight of family dinners for generations and which should be relegated to less critical components. But it goes deeper. The Amish prefer wood from trees that grew slowly, often in colder climates where shorter growing seasons mean tighter growth rings. Why does this matter? Because wood density directly correlates with durability and stability. A tree that took 80 years to reach harvestable size has fundamentally different cellular structure than one grown quickly in optimal conditions. The slow-growth wood is harder, more resistant to denting, less prone to movement, and develops a patina over time that fast-growth wood never achieves. This is why Amish craftsmen will pay premium prices for old-growth lumber or wood reclaimed from century-old barns, materials that simply cannot be replicated by modern forestry practices. Then comes the aging process. Freshly cut wood, even if properly kiln-dried to reduce moisture content, isn't ready for fine furniture. The Amish know this. They'll store wood for years, sometimes a decade or more, allowing it to stabilize completely, to finish releasing internal stresses, to reach an equilibrium with the local environment. This aging transforms the material. The resins mature, the colors develop depth, and the wood becomes more workable, almost as if it's eager to be shaped. When a billionaire pays $50,000 for an Amish dining table, a significant portion of that cost is wood that's been patiently waiting in a barn for years, accumulating value while doing absolutely nothing except existing. That's luxury that factories, with their quarterly earnings reports and inventory turnover metrics, simply cannot compete with the construction process. Now we get to where rubber meets road, or more accurately, where chisel meets wood. The construction process of Amish furniture is where theory becomes reality, where patience becomes tangible, and where craftsmanship transforms from abstract concept to physical object. Imagine spending 6 months building a single piece of furniture, not because you're slow or inefficient, but because excellence cannot be rushed and quality cannot be faked. Every single joint, every surface, every hidden detail that no one will ever see receives the same meticulous attention as the features that will be immediately visible. This isn't just about building furniture. This is about building a legacy. The foundation of any exceptional Amish piece is joinery that would make modern engineers weep with envy. Forget screws. Forget nails. Forget metal brackets and corner braces. We're talking about wood connecting to wood with such precision that the joints are actually stronger than the surrounding material. The mortise and tenon joints we mentioned earlier. In Amish furniture, these are cut with tolerances measured in thousandths of an inch. Too loose and the joint will fail. Too tight and you'll split the wood during assembly. The sweet spot requires decades of experience, an intimate understanding of how different wood species behave, and hand-eye coordination developed over thousands of hours at the workbench. But it's not just one type of joint. Depending on the application, an Amish craftsman will employ techniques that most modern woodworkers have only seen in textbooks. Sliding dovetails for attaching tabletops to bases, allowing for wood movement while maintaining structural integrity. Through tenons that penetrate completely and are then wedged for a connection that actually gets tighter as the wood ages. Bridle joints for chair frames where strength must be maximized in thin components. Each joint is selected not arbitrarily, but based on centuries of accumulated knowledge about what works, what lasts, and what fails. Then comes the finishing process, and this is where Amish furniture separates itself from everything else on the market. Most factory furniture receives a finish sprayed on in seconds, a chemical coating that sits on top of the wood like plastic wrap, sealing it, protecting it, but also hiding it and preventing it from breathing. Amish finishes are different. They're hand-rubbed, often dozens of coats applied over weeks, each one allowed to fully cure before the next is added. The finish penetrates deep into the wood fibers, enhancing the natural grain rather than obscuring it, protecting while still allowing the wood to interact with its environment. The result? A surface that develops character over time, that can be repaired if damaged, that improves with age rather than deteriorating. When you run your hand across an Amish tabletop, you're not feeling plastic. You're feeling wood, enhanced and protected, but still fundamentally honest about what it is. Time investment reality. Let's talk about something that makes absolutely no sense to our modern, productivity-obsessed brains, deliberately working slower to create something better. In a world where Amazon delivers furniture to your doorstep in 48 hours and IKEA lets you walk out with a bookshelf in a flat-pack box, the Amish approach to time seems almost offensive to efficiency. 6 months for a dining table, 3 months for a bedroom set. A year-long waiting list just to place an order. This should be a business failure. Instead, it's exactly why billionaires are lining up and why these pieces command prices that seem disconnected from reality. Here's what 6 months of work actually looks like. Week 1 might be entirely devoted to wood selection, visiting suppliers, examining grain patterns, rejecting pieces that don't meet standards most people couldn't even articulate. Weeks 2 through 4 could be spent on design refinement, creating full-scale drawings, building mock-ups of critical joints, ensuring that proportions are mathematically harmonious. Then the actual cutting begins. But even this happens at a pace that would bankrupt any modern business. A single chair leg might occupy an entire day, selecting the blank, rough-cutting it, shaping it with hand planes, refining the curves with spoke shaves, sanding through increasingly fine grits until the surface feels like silk. Compare this to factory production where chair legs are turned on automated lathes, dozens per hour, each one identical to the last. Perfect consistency, zero variation, maximum efficiency. But here's what gets lost. Those factory legs are made from fast-growth wood that's barely dried, turned on machines that occasionally produce imperceptible defects. Finished with spray coatings applied by workers who couldn't tell oak from maple. The Amish craftsman, by contrast, has held this particular piece of wood in his hands for hours. He knows where the grain changes direction. He's noticed the subtle color variation that will become a beautiful feature. He's identified a small knot that needs to be positioned strategically so it adds character rather than becoming a structural weakness. This time investment isn't waste. It's quality control at a level that cannot be achieved any other way. When you rush, you miss things. You overlook the slight twist in a board that will become a major warp in 5 years. You don't notice the grain tear out that will telegraph through the finish. You skimp on sanding because nobody will see that surface anyway. The Amish craftsman doesn't have these pressures. He's not being measured on units per hour or pieces per week. His reputation in a small, close-knit community is everything. And that reputation is built on furniture that's still being used 3 generations from now. So yes, 6 months for a table seems insane, until you realize you're not paying for 6 months of work. You're paying for furniture that will outlast you, your children, and quite possibly your grandchildren, all while looking better with each passing decade. Generational knowledge transfer theirs. Something happening in Amish communities that's become almost extinct in modern society. The complete transfer of mastery from one generation to the next, not through YouTube tutorials or online courses, but through years of silent observation, patient practice, and gradual progression from simple tasks to complex projects. This is how knowledge survived for thousands of years before we invented schools. And it turns out, this ancient method produces a depth of understanding that modern education simply cannot replicate. An Amish furniture apprentice doesn't graduate after 4 years with a certificate. He emerges after a decade or more with capabilities that seem almost supernatural to those of us who've never experienced this level of mentorship. The journey begins young, often around age 12 or 13, when a boy starts spending time in his father's or grandfather's workshop. Not as cheap labor, though he'll certainly be working, but as an observer, absorbing lessons that aren't being explicitly taught. He watches how the master examines wood, noting the subtle head tilts and finger movements that indicate evaluation happening. He sees which tools get selected for which tasks, building an intuitive database of appropriate applications. He hears the sounds of correctly sharpened tools versus those needing attention, developing an auditory sense of quality. All of this happens before he's allowed to touch anything important. The first tasks are deliberately simple, but fundamentally important. Sharpening tools, a skill that seems basic, but separates amateurs from craftsmen. A truly sharp edge, the kind that can shave hair and slice end grain cleanly, requires understanding of angles, pressure, movement patterns, and feedback interpretation. An apprentice might spend months just maintaining the workshop's tools, developing muscle memory and tactile sensitivity that will serve him for decades. Then comes wood preparation. These are foundational skills that must become second nature, performed without conscious thought before advancing to joinery and assembly. What makes this system remarkable is the built-in quality control. A master craftsman won't let an apprentice move to complex tasks until the simple ones are executed flawlessly. Not once, but consistently, day after day, week after week. There's no faking competence when your mentor is watching your every move and has decades of experience identifying subtle errors. The apprentice learns not just techniques, but judgment, when to trust the tool and when to trust your eye, when to follow convention and when innovation is appropriate, when to push through difficulty and when to stop and reconsider. These nuanced lessons cannot be written in books or demonstrated in videos. They're transmitted through shared experience, accumulated gradually through thousands of hours working side by side with someone who truly knows by the time an Amish craftsman is ready to accept his own commissions, usually in his mid-20s. He possesses knowledge that's been refined over generations. He knows tricks his great-great-grandfather discovered, understands solutions to problems modern woodworkers don't even know exist, and carries forward standards of excellence that have survived precisely because they work. When a billionaire buys Amish furniture, they're not just purchasing an object. They're acquiring the endpoint of a knowledge chain stretching back centuries, maintained through a teaching method that's proven more effective than anything our modern educational system has produced. Durability that outlasts generations lets destroy a myth that furniture companies desperately want you to believe: that all furniture eventually wears out and needs replacing. This is a lie designed to keep you buying, upgrading, and consuming on a predictable cycle that benefits their quarterly earnings but destroys your wealth accumulation. The truth, which Amish furniture proves definitively, is that properly built furniture doesn't just last a lifetime. It lasts multiple lifetimes, improving with age rather than deteriorating, becoming more valuable rather than worthless. We're talking about chairs being sat in daily for 100 years. that are structurally sounder than factory chairs. Fresh out of the box, that the engineering principles behind this durability are simultaneously simple and profound. Start with the joinery we discussed earlier, when wood is connected with properly cut mortise and tenon joints. Wedged dovetails, or through tenons, something fascinating happens over time. As the wood naturally expands and contracts with seasonal humidity changes, these joints actually tighten. The mechanical advantage increases. The structure becomes more rigid. Compare this to screw-together furniture, where those same expansion and contraction cycles gradually loosen the fasteners, creating wobble, then failure. Amish furniture gets stronger with age. Factory furniture gets weaker. Then consider the wood itself. Remember that slow growth, carefully selected, properly aged lumber. That material is fundamentally more stable than anything coming out of modern supply chains. It's already gone through decades of expansion, contraction, and stress before becoming furniture. It's reached equilibrium with environmental conditions. When it becomes a table or chair, it's not going to surprise you with warping, twisting, or splitting, because all of that potential instability was identified and rejected during material selection or worked out during the aging process. But perhaps most importantly, Amish furniture is designed for repair, not replacement, but repair. When a finish gets scratched, you can repair it because it's real oil or wax, not plastic coating. When a joint eventually loosens after 70 years of use, you can disassemble, clean, reglue, and reassemble because the joinery was designed. With this possibility in mind, there are documented cases of Amish furniture being returned to the original craftsman's grandson for minor repairs after 80 years of continuous use. Try getting that service from IKEA. Here's the wealth-building perspective that billionaires understand. A $5,000 IKEA bedroom set that needs replacing every 7 years costs you over $70,000 across a typical lifetime, and at the end, you have nothing. A $50,000 Amish bedroom set that lasts 150 years costs you $333 per year, and at the end, your great-grandchildren have an appreciating asset. The disc isn't expensive. This is the smartest furniture investment possible. The billionaire appeal. Now we arrive at the fascinating psychology of why people who could buy literally anything choose furniture made by communities that don't even have electricity. This isn't about functionality. Billionaires aren't choosing Amish furniture because their factory alternatives don't work adequately. This is about something much deeper, much more primal, and much more revealing about human nature at the highest levels of wealth. When you have unlimited resources, when every material desire can be instantly gratified, when you've exhausted the novelty of luxury brands and exotic experiences, what's left? Authenticity, rarity, and meaning become the ultimate luxuries. With the exclusivity factor, most luxury is fake exclusivity, artificially limited to create perceived scarcity while maintaining profitable production volumes. Limited edition sneakers, they made 50,000 pairs. Exclusive handbags, thousands produced annually. Designer furniture, mass manufactured in factories, just with premium materials. But genuine Amish furniture, there are physical limits to production that cannot be overcome with money. One craftsman can only make so many pieces per year. Communities are small and don't want to scale. Waiting lists are real, not manufactured marketing tactics. When a billionaire wants an Amish dining set, they wait like everyone else, and this drives them absolutely crazy in the best possible way. Then there's the authenticity appeal in an increasingly artificial world. These are people who live in smart homes, fly in private jets, communicate through screens, and exist in environments optimized by algorithms and managed by staff. Everything in their lives is curated, engineered, and designed for maximum efficiency. Amish furniture represents the polar opposite: human hands, human decisions, human imperfections that make each piece unique. No two Amish chairs are identical because they can't be. The wood grain differs, the craftsman's hand pressure varies. Slightly, environmental conditions during construction weren't precisely controlled. This variability, which modern manufacturing eliminates as defects, becomes precious to people drowning in perfection. There's also the status signal that only other ultra-wealthy individuals recognize. Anyone can buy a Ferrari. That's just money. But having furniture made by a specific Amish craftsman whose waiting list is 5 years long, that signals patience, discernment, connections, and understanding of value that transcends price tags. It's a flex so subtle that most people won't even notice, which makes it perfect for circles where obvious displays of wealth are considered gauche. Your dinner guests might not comment on your Amish table, but the ones who know will recognize exactly what they're looking at. Finally, there's legacy. Billionaires think generationally. This furniture will bear their family name, not for decades, but for centuries. Sitting in homes that don't exist yet, used by descendants not yet born, carrying forward their wealth and values in tangible form. Environmental impact, here's where the conversation gets really interesting, because Amish furniture accidentally became the most sustainable option available long before sustainability became a marketing buzzword. These communities weren't trying to save the planet or appeal to eco-conscious consumers. They were simply following principles that made sense within their worldview. And it turns out, those principles align perfectly with what environmental scientists now tell us we desperately need. While corporations spend millions on greenwashing campaigns and carbon offset credits, the Amish have been running a zero-emission closed-loop, completely sustainable furniture production system for 300 years without even trying. With the most obvious factor, no electricity, no fossil fuels burned during production. An Amish workshop's carbon footprint is essentially zero. The tools are human-powered. The heat comes from wood scraps generated during construction, which would decompose and release the same carbon anyway. The lighting is natural daylight supplemented by oil lamps. Compare this to modern furniture factories running industrial machinery 24 hours daily, powering climate-controlled warehouses, operating automated assembly lines. The energy difference per piece produced is staggering, measured in thousands of kilowatts-hours for factory furniture versus literally zero for Amish equivalents. But it goes deeper than just production energy. Consider the supply chain. Amish craftsmen source wood locally, often from within 50 miles of their workshops. There are no container ships, no cross-continental trucking, no complex logistics networks burning diesel to move materials around. The globe, the wood is cut, dried, and used in roughly the same geographic area where the tree grew. Meanwhile, your average furniture store piece involves raw materials from Southeast Asia, components manufactured in China, assembly in Vietnam, shipping to distribution centers in California, trucking to regional warehouses, and finally, delivery to your home. The accumulated carbon footprint before you even sit in the chair is astronomical. Then there's longevity, which might be the most important environmental factor. The sustainability movement focuses heavily on recycling and renewable materials, but the greenest product is the one you never have to replace. Every time you buy new furniture, you're consuming resources with harvested metals mined, petroleum-based finishes applied, packaging materials used, transportation emissions generated. Amish furniture that lasts 5 generations eliminates. For replacement cycles, that's for trees not cut, for sets of manufacturing emissions not produced, for shipping journeys not taken. Even the materials themselves are more sustainable. That old-growth wood or reclaimed barn lumber isn't creating new demand for logging. The finishes are natural oils and waxes, biodegradable and non-toxic, compared to polyurethane and lacquer-based factory finishes that off-gas volatile organic compounds for years. When Amish furniture eventually does reach end of life, after a century or more, it's entirely biodegradable or can be completely reclaimed for other projects. No landfill, no environmental burden. Ultra-wealthy individuals increasingly understand that true luxury isn't consumption without consequence. It's living well while minimizing environmental impact, and Amish furniture delivers this perfectly. The pricing breakdown, let's talk money, because the sticker shock of Amish furniture is real and deserves honest explanation. When you see a simple-looking wooden chair priced at $15,000, your immediate reaction is probably that someone's trying to rip you off. But when you actually break down where that money goes, something fascinating emerges. Amish furniture might be the only luxury product where the price actually reflects value rather than brand markup and marketing costs. Every dollar has a clear destination. And understanding this transforms perception from overpriced furniture to criminally undervalued craftsmanship. Start with labor, which is the largest component. Remember that 6-month timeline for a dining table. Let's be conservative and say the master craftsman works on it for 800 hours total, including design, material selection, construction, and finishing. At even modest skilled labor rates of $50 per hour, that's $40,000 in labor alone. But here's the thing, that $50 rate is laughably low for someone with 30 years of experience. Executing skills most people couldn't learn in a lifetime. A specialized surgeon makes $500 per hour. A top attorney bills $800. An artisan who can hand-cut dovetails blind, select wood by grain pattern, and finish surfaces to museum quality. $50 an hour is a bargain that only exists because Amish communities don't operate on market rate principles. Materials represent the next significant cost. That slow-growth hardwood we discussed, aged for years in careful storage. Premium walnut runs $3,000 per 1,000 board feet. A large dining table might require 200 board feet of carefully selected, perfectly matched material. That's $600 in raw lumber, and that's before considering the wood that gets rejected, the waste from milling, the offcuts that aren't suitable for visible surfaces. Realistically, material costs for a major piece easily exceed $2,000, and that's using conservative estimates. Then there's overhead that people forget exists. The workshop itself maintains tools that represent generations of accumulated investment, insurance, utilities, even if minimal, business licenses, and the occasional need to replace worn-out equipment. These costs exist even in Amish communities and need to be distributed across the limited number of pieces produced annually. Here's where it gets interesting. Add up 800 hours at $50 plus $2,000 in materials plus reasonable overhead, and you're at around $40,000. Now compare this to luxury furniture brands selling factory-made pieces for similar prices. Those companies spend 30% on marketing, 20% on retail overhead, 15% on corporate profit margins. The actual production cost of a $20,000 designer chair might be $3,000, meaning you're paying $17,000 for branding. There's no advertising budget, no celebrity endorsements, no fancy showrooms in Milan. Modern market dynamics. The way Amish furniture reaches consumers in 2026 is a fascinating collision between 18th century production methods and 21st century market forces. These communities don't have websites, don't run Instagram ads, and can't take credit card payments directly. Yet they're selling millions of dollars worth of furniture annually to some of the world's wealthiest individuals. This happens through a network of dealers, brokers, and intermediaries that has evolved organically, creating its own ecosystem with unique challenges and opportunities that buyers need to understand before dropping $50,000 on a dining set. The traditional route involves physical galleries, often located near Amish communities in Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Indiana. These aren't your typical furniture stores with inventory sitting on showroom floors. They're more like art galleries, displaying sample pieces and facilitating custom orders directly with specific craftsmen. The gallery owner has spent years building relationships with various workshops, understanding each craftsman's specialties, style, and current waiting list situation. When you walk in wanting a bedroom set, they're essentially matchmaking between your requirements and the right artisan for the job. This system works, but introduces markup that bothers some buyers. The gallery needs to survive, so they're adding 20 to 30% on top of the craftsman's price. From the buyer's perspective, you're paying for expertise you might not need if you could connect directly. From the gallery's perspective, they're providing valuable services, quality verification, project management, communication bridging between modern clients and communities without phones, and recourse if something goes wrong. The question becomes whether that service justifies the additional cost. Then there's the authenticity problem that's getting worse as Amish furniture becomes more valuable. Not everything marketed as Amish-Made actually comes from Amish workshops. Some dealers buy factory furniture and claim Amish origins, banking on buyers not knowing how to verify authenticity. Others work with Mennonite communities who use some power tools, selling these pieces as Amish despite different construction methods. The most insidious are operations that have Amish craftsmen doing final assembly on factory-made components. Technically truthful about Amish involvement, but fundamentally dishonest about the nature of the product. Smart buyers are learning to Verify authenticity through several methods. Requesting workshop visits, though many craftsmen decline this invasion of privacy. Examining joinery closely, looking for hand-cut irregularities that machines can't replicate. Checking wood selection and grain matching. Areas where factory production always reveals itself through excessive uniformity. Getting references from previous customers and checking with Amish community leaders who know which craftsmen are legitimate. There's also emerging investment potential. High-end Amish pieces are starting to appear at auctions, sometimes selling for multiples of their original price. Collectors are treating exceptional examples as fine art, recognizing that as master craftsmen age and retire, their work becomes finite and increasingly valuable. This creates an interesting dynamic where buying Amish furniture isn't just consumption, but potentially wealth preservation or appreciation. The intangible value spent this entire video discussing measurable factors: joinery, precision, wood quality, construction time, durability metrics, pricing structures, but now we need to address what might actually be the most important element, the thing that truly justifies premium prices and drives billionaire obsession, yet cannot be quantified or photographed or demonstrated in any objective way. We're talking about the intangible value, the emotional and philosophical weight that Amish furniture carries, the meaning it provides in lives that have every material comfort, but often lack deeper significance. When you sit at an Amish dining table, you're not just using furniture. You're engaging with a physical manifestation of human resistance against the relentless tide of automation, efficiency, optimization, and AI replacement that's consuming every other aspect of modern life. This table represents a craftsman saying no to shortcuts, to compromises, to the pressure to produce more, faster, cheaper. In a world where algorithms are writing articles, AI is generating art, and robots are assembling cars, this table proves that human hands creating something with patience and skill still matters. That defiance, that insistence on human relevance, resonates powerfully with people who wonder whether their own work will matter in an automated future. There's also a profound connection to lineage and continuity. The billionaire buying this furniture knows their great-great-grandchildren will use these same pieces, creating a physical bridge across generations that survives in ways digital assets and financial portfolios cannot. Family photos become digital files that get lost. Documents degrade, but this table, this chair, these physical objects will carry forward, accumulating stories and memories, serving as gathering places for family moments that haven't happened yet. When everything else in life is temporary and disposable, having something genuinely permanent changes your relationship with time and legacy. Then there's the human connection embedded in every piece. Somewhere in rural Pennsylvania, a man you've never met spent 6 months thinking about how your family would use this table. He selected wood imagining your children's hands touching it. He cut joints considering how it would support your family. Dinners for the next century. His hands shaped every surface you'll touch. There's an intimacy in that relationship that factory furniture, no matter how expensive, cannot replicate. You're not buying from a corporation. You're receiving work from an individual who put themselves into this creation. Perhaps most importantly, Amish furniture serves as daily reminder that quality is possible, that excellence exists, that humans can still create things worthy of wonder in an age of mediocrity and planned obsolescence. Every time you see it, touch it, use it, there's subtle reinforcement that resisting the pressure toward cheap, quick, and disposable is worthwhile. In lives filled with compromise and optimization, this furniture stands as evidence that at least one area refuses to surrender standards, and somehow that philosophical statement might be worth more than all the practical benefits combined. So there you have it, the real reason billionaires obsess over furniture made by people who reject everything modern. It's not just wood and craftsmanship. It's buying permanence in a disposable world, authenticity in an artificial age, and human connection in a digital era. Now, I want to hear from you. Would you invest in Amish furniture if you had the money? Drop your thoughts below, smash that like button, and subscribe to Amish Forge for more stories that challenge how you see value and wealth. See you next time.